when you have a whole new world starting to buy, you go into price discovery. And so I can draw a line and say, like, listen, 100 was my target because it felt like a good round number. How do I even think about Bitcoin conceptually? I think of gold, right? Market cap of gold is 13 trillion, right? Market cap of Bitcoin right now at 65,000 times 2 is what, 1.4 trillion? So we're like 1/10 of gold. Could we be 20% of gold in 2 years? Of course we could. $85 trillion of wealth in the United States between 60 and 80 years old. As they die, that money goes to younger people who are much more comfortable with buying dog with hat, or Bitcoin, or Ethereum, or Solana.
Galaxy Digital CEO Mike Novogratz is exceedingly bullish on crypto assets in 2024, citing what he describes as the convergence of two powerful factors: the macro environment and increased adoption. To begin with, Novogratz believes the spot Bitcoin ETFs introduced Bitcoin and the entire cryptocurrency industry to a whole new world, a world of immense wealth worth tens of trillions of dollars. This world is the traditional finance world, and it is primarily populated by older generations of Americans who, before the ETF's approval, had many misconceptions about Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. On January 10th, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission gave this multi-trillion-dollar industry Bitcoin in a whole different package, and the response has been quite overwhelming. Novogratz expects the unprecedented demand for Bitcoin through the spot Bitcoin ETFs to continue for the rest of the year and for many years to come. Another factor that makes the billionaire investor even more bullish on Bitcoin and the overall digital asset space is the gloomy macro environment in the United States and the rest of the world. In one of his recent posts on social media platform X, Novogratz notes that the irresponsible fiscal and monetary policies in countries worldwide are major reasons why Bitcoin prices will always rise. The Bitcoin story is spreading far and wide, Novogratz notes in his post, and until we see countries adopting more credible fiscal policies, the narrative will only grow stronger. Bitcoin is a report card on fiscal stewardship. A few days ago, Novogratz spoke at the Bitcoin Investor Day in New York. During the discussion with the host of the Pomp podcast, Anthony Pompliano, Novogratz discussed why he got into Bitcoin, crypto regulation, the spot Bitcoin ETFs, and how the gloomy macro environment will continue to contribute to the popularity and growth of the cryptocurrency industry. As we bring you clips from the discussion, please take a little time to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the video.
Bitcoin is a macro asset. Like, what got me into Bitcoin in 2013 when it was trading at 98 bucks was somebody called me and said, look into this thing. And I was like, macro asset. And I was a macro trader. At that point, the story was inflation was coming, right? We had 2012, the European financial crises, and everybody was worried about inflation. It's funny how the consensus can be wrong sometimes. Paul Singer, anyone who knows Paul Singer, he might be one of the greatest investors of the last 30 years. Runs Elliott Advisors. Tough son of a bitch. He took an ad out in the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times wanting Ben Bernanke, the chairman of the Fed, to go to jail for what he was doing with QE2. Not kidding. And it was signed by 50 really intelligent people. They were so worried about inflation. And so that's why I thought, oh, you buy about Bitcoin. It's got an inflation hedge. China was buying it. There were a lot of people that had lost faith in governments, right, post-financial crises. And so I was like, macro asset, buy some. And I remember looking at the chart and saying, this thing is going to go to 1,000. And sure enough, it went to 1,000. Matter of fact, I was on the cover of the FT, the only time I've ever been on the cover of the Financial Times. When I was at a conference like this, I didn't know the press was there. And I said, Bitcoin's going to go up because this, and this, it's going to go to 1,000. And August 2013, you can find it. There I am. And then it went all the way back down. I got hooked with this idea that it was the first asset that started from the little people, right? It wasn't an institutional asset where at the end the taxi cab driver buys it and it's time to sell. It was a global revolution, and it was the first global asset, right? In 2017, when we had that great bubble, That was fun, right? It was more of an Ethereum-led ICO, Bitcoin to 20,000. I remember saying over and over, like, this is the people's revolution, right? Mr. and Mrs. Watanabe in Japan, Mr. and Mrs. Kim in Korea, people in India, in Africa, in Nigeria, all over the place participating. There are no global markets, really, right? Gold is a global market, but in the 1999 tech bubble, that was a US bubble, right? There was a few people that participated in outside, but broadly Japanese people buy Japanese bonds, right? And so here's the first global asset. And it was, people driven. And so I started this way, way early, this tagline, the herd is coming. And boy, did I feel silly for years. I was talking about the institutional herd, right? I was one of the first institutional guys, me, Dan Moorhead. There were a few of us to start telling the Bitcoin story to institutions. And most of them just said, oh, that's really interesting, close. A few intrepid, you guys had Fairfax County, got in early, but very few institutions did. And so I look back, if I made a mistake in my Bitcoin journey, it was probably building an institutional business when I should have started with retail, because it really was a people's business. Wall Street beats you up and wrings you out and slaps you in the face over 25 years, but you'd like to think you gained some wisdom. And most of the crypto community was young, at times naive, full of big ideas, sometimes silly. And I thought I had some role to play at trying to bring some wisdom to this community and trying to get the older, stodgy crypto institutional community to understand it. And so it checked all my boxes.
Despite the rousing success of the spot Bitcoin ETFs, US regulators, especially the Gary Gensler-led SEC and anti-crypto politicians like Elizabeth Warren, are still dead set against the industry. While Novogratz expects the anti-crypto rhetoric to continue throughout the year, he believes things will change quickly after the November elections. According to the billionaire investor and entrepreneur, Americans have voted, and they've voted that they like Bitcoin. One of Novogratz's recent posts on the issue reads, "It's time for the President of the United States administration to take notice that the American people have voted, and they voted that they really like Bitcoin and digital assets. The price action since the ETF is a vote. The same thing applies to Congress. Let's get off the couch and pass good crypto legislation. The American people want it." Novogratz has been pushing for regulatory clarity for the cryptocurrency space since at least 2021. While speaking at a conference in June 2021, the billionaire investors noted that more regulation of the crypto space would help institutional investors become more comfortable with digital assets and help the asset class really take off. "We need some regulation," the Galaxy Digital said. "That's an unpopular opinion in crypto circles, but if you want to have institutions join the revolution, you need some regulation." During the discussion with Pomp, Novogratz also talked about the macro environment and how irresponsible governmental policies contribute to Bitcoin's growing popularity. Here are more clips from the video.
The two vectors have always been macro, right? Why Bitcoin, right? And so that's the same broad story as gold, silver, other hard assets, and adoption. So right now, adoption's way overwhelming because we've just tapped into, so here are the numbers. There's $84 trillion of wealth, owned by US baby boomers. Baby boomers are broadly 60 to 80 years old. They are entering into their die-off phase. They broadly invest through registered investment advisors. You call your broker at, Dean Witter or Morgan Stanley or AJ Edwards and say, "Hey, what's my portfolio? Put a little bit here." That is the ETF process, and it has just started. And so early, big adoption, a lot of the smaller platform regional brokers have been buying, but a lot of the big platforms like Morgan Stanley, and they're still not selling yet. They're going to, they're getting prepared to. You can buy it on their platform, but the salesmen aren't selling it. One thing I learned about Bitcoin, it's always sold, it's not bought. Somebody sits down and explains it to you. right? What's the macro story of Bitcoin? It's relatively simple. Our government can't keep its pants on and is spending too much money. And when you spend more money than you take in, you depreciate your currency. That went from a problem in the early 2000s, 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, to a crisis with Donald Trump, right? And then Joe Biden. Trump and Biden will go down as the two presidents who destroyed our fiscal stability, right? Trump raised government spending a ton before COVID. And then when COVID happened, it was, let the dogs out. Biden came in and said, now I've got this cover to run my progressive agenda that helped me get elected. And I'm doubly panicking on the COVID, relief. And so we went from, and this is a little nuanced, but it's important to understand. We went from a government that believed at our core that the federal government is allowed to spend 20% of GDP every year, and we try to tax 20%. My first job in life was working at the Office of Management and Budget under Ronald Reagan, 1984. And I learned that. You tax 20, you spend 20. We did it 1 year, 1999 with Bill Clinton. Since I've been post-college, the budget has been balanced 1 year in America, right? But we got close. 2% deficit, 3% deficit. We're now running structural 5, 6, 7% deficits in a good economy, right? Keynesian economics says you're supposed to run deficits in a bad economy and run surpluses in a good economy. We've normalized spending 25% of GDP on federal government. That's this year's budget, next year's budget, the following year's budget. That happened like this. It happened between Trump and Biden, and that's insane. If you take the Congressional Budget Office's predictions, which are always rosy, right? They always are more optimistic than they should be. In 25 years, it has debt to GDP at 250%. Like, that is a recipe for housing prices going higher, Bitcoin going higher, gold going higher, silver going higher. And until you see a government, both Dems and Republicans, that say enough, we are going to go back to a Simpson-Bowles balanced budget amendment. We are going to cut spending from 25% back to 18 or 19%. Bitcoin is going to keep going higher.
According to data from the U.S. Treasury Department, the U.S. national debt has grown by over $1.6 trillion since it first hit $33 trillion in September 2023. We are now at $34.614 trillion, with $1 trillion added every 100 days and $10 billion added daily. This is precisely why Novogratz and other sound money advocates are certain that Bitcoin prices will get significantly higher in the coming years. Politicians around the world, with the exception of a few countries like Argentina, are not ready for reforms that will set us on the right path. They will continue debasing fiat currencies and weakening the financial system until it crumbles. Novogratz commented on the debt situation in the US in another post on X. It reads, "What no one wants to hear is that we need to cut government spending pretty drastically. We also need to raise taxes on the wealthy. We also need to close loopholes. If we do all this, we might have a chance to not have a debt death spiral. Right now, it's 34 trillion. 1 trillion every 100 days. 35, 36, 37. It's why it is so easy to convince people to buy Bitcoin and other hard assets." Please share your thoughts on Mike Novogratz's outlook on the macro environment and how it will contribute to increased Bitcoin and crypto adoption in 2024 and beyond. Also, ensure you like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel for more videos. Everything you do helps with the YouTube algorithm and immensely contributes to the channel's growth. Thanks for watching.